I want to start this story with a truth I learned too late in life. A mother's heart never stops waiting. Even when her hands grow empty. Even when her home grows quiet. Even when her child grows up and walks into a new life. My name doesn't matter much. But my story does, that because somewhere out there, another mother might be living the same quiet ache I once lived. My son Saad used to call me every night. Sometimes it was just a minute. Just a soft, "Mom, did you eat?" Or "Mom, I reached home." Those tiny sentences were enough to light up my whole world. But life changes, people change. And sometimes, the ones we love the most change in ways we never imagined. I still remember the first day he forgot it was a Wednesday. I cooked his favorite rice out of habit. The habit of a mother whose hands never stop caring, even when her child doesn't see it anymore. I waited by the phone. The evening passed. Then the night. Then another day. No call. At first I brushed it aside. He must be busy, I whispered to myself. He has work. He has a new home. A new routine. I should not bother him. But when days turned into weeks, the silence became louder than any words. One day when he finally called, his voice felt distant, formal. As if I was no longer the home he returned to, but a responsibility he needed to finish quickly. And then, one evening, he said something that broke me in a way I never expected. He sighed deeply and said, "Mom, I don't always have time for calls. I have my own life now." My hands froze and my heart didn't. It cracked quietly, the way thin glass cracks when no one is watching. I didn't cry. Mothers don't always cry when they break. Sometimes they just fall silent. I smiled into the phone instead and said, "It's okay, son. I understand." But that was the night I realized something painful. You can give a child your whole life and still lose your place in theirs. And this is the story of how I learned to live again. Not as a mother waiting by the door, but as a woman rediscovering herself. Before everything changed, my life with Saad was beautifully simple. He was my only child and my whole world wrapped in one small pair of hands. When Saad was little, he followed me everywhere. Into the kitchen, into the garden. Even when I prayed, he would sit beside me and lean on my shoulder as if that was his safest place. He was a quiet child, soft-hearted. Kind, he rarely asked for anything, but he always noticed everything. If my back hurt, he would bring me a cushion. If I looked tired, he would whisper, "Mom, can I help?" And even though he was small, he tried. Life was not easy for us, we were not rich. But what we lacked in wealth, we had in love. He grew up seeing me work, cook, clean, and still smile at the end of the day. And he often said, "One day, Mom, I will make your life easy." I never expected anything from him. That a mother's love is not an investment. But every time he said those words, my heart felt warm. When he grew older, he became busier. School, then college, then his first job. But even then, he made time for me. He used to say, "No matter how big I get, Mom, I will always be with you." I believed him. Maybe because I wanted to. Maybe because every mother believes her son will always stay close. When Saad got married, something in our home changed. Quietly, slowly, almost gently at first, the rooms felt different. His laughter, once filling every corner, now visited only on weekends. But I didn't mind. Marriage is a new beginning. A new chapter. And a mother must learn to take a step back. I told him many times, "Take care of your new home, son. I'm fine." And I meant it. Still deep inside, a small part of me hoped that he would call often. Just to hear my voice. Just to remind me I was still a part of his world. In the beginning he did, but as weeks passed, the calls grew shorter, the texts became rare. And the visits became something he arranged, like appointments, not moments from the heart. I thought it was normal. New marriages come with new responsibilities. But then I noticed something else. His tone changed. His warmth faded. The boy who once held my hand so tightly now seemed to hold it only from a distance. Sometimes when I called him, he would answer with a hurried voice. "Yes, Mom? Is everything okay?" As if my call meant something must be wrong, as if I couldn't call just to say hello. I started dialing his number less. just so I wouldn't sound like a burden. I didn't tell anyone how much the silence hurt. I didn't want to complain. Mothers rarely complain. They simply swallow their pain and keep loving anyway. Kept myself busy. Cooking, cleaning, praying, walking around the house with no sound except my footsteps. But even silence has a weight. And mine grew heavier each day. There were nights I sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker, imagining him walking through the door, smiling the way he used to. Those memories were my comfort. And sometimes my sadness too. Then came the moment that changed everything. The moment when he looked at me and said words I wish I had never heard. "Mom, I don't always have time for you anymore." That was the moment the real story began. The change did not happen in one day. It came slowly, like a gentle shadow that grows longer as evening arrives. First, I did not even realize it. I thought Saad was simply adjusting to his new life. I told myself it was normal. Every mother says the same thing at the beginning. But the small signs were there, waiting for me to notice. The first time Saad didn't pick up my call, I told myself he must be busy. Of course he would be. A new home. New responsibilities. A wife who needed his attention. Still my heart waited. That day, I remember sitting near the window, my phone resting on my lap, the sunlight warming my hands. I pressed the green button and listened to the ringing. Once, 3 times. Then it went silent. No answer. I placed the phone on the table and smiled to myself, even though no one was watching. "He must be at work," I whispered softly. "He'll call back when he's free." But he did not call back that day. Nor that evening. When night came, I pushed the uneasiness aside and told myself, he must be tired. Let him rest. I'll call tomorrow. The next morning when he finally answered, his voice was different. Not cold. Not rude, just distant. As if he was talking while looking somewhere else, as if his mind was already in the next task. "Mom, I was busy," he said quickly. His tone was rushed, as though he wanted to keep the call short. I tried to keep my voice cheerful. "That's all right, son. How are you? Did you eat? How's the new home?" Yes, everything is fine," he replied. "Mom, I'll talk later. I'm heading out." And before I could say another word, before I could even ask about his day, the call ended. Just like that. I stared at the phone screen for a few seconds. It felt strange, almost unreal. Saad had never spoken like that before. He used to talk to me about every little thing. His work, his friends, even what he ate for lunch. Now his responses were short, like he was crossing items off a list. Maybe he's just stressed, I told myself. But a small ache sat quietly inside my chest. The next weekend I prepared Saad's favorite dish, chicken korma, thinking he might come visit. I even ironed my nicest clothes, the soft blue ones he always said looked peaceful on me. Waited. Morning passed. Afternoon came. Evening arrived. No message, no call, no knock at the door. I sat at the dinner table, the food untouched, listening to the quiet hum of the fan overhead. Finally I called him. He answered on the 4th ring. "Mom, I'm out with some friends," he said lightly. "I'll talk to you later, okay?" "Of course," I replied softly. I didn't want to disturb him. I didn't want him to feel annoyed. But when I put the phone down, the silence in the house felt heavier than usual. One evening, Saad came home for just 10 minutes. He had to drop something off. I remember the moment very clearly. He walked in, distracted, his phone constantly buzzing. His replies to me were short, almost mechanical. "Son, sit for a while," I tried. "I made tea." "No time, Mom," he said quickly. "I have to go back." It was the first time he ever said those words to me. "I have no time." I felt something sharp inside my chest. Not anger. Not shock. Just a quiet, painful understanding. He hugged me lightly before leaving, but even that hug felt rushed, like someone tapping your shoulder before walking away. After he left, the house felt smaller. His cup of tea remained untouched on the table. The steam slowly faded into the air, leaving behind a cold reminder. My son was no longer mine the way he used to be. I never blamed my daughter-in-law. She was polite, respectful, and always soft-spoken. But there was a certain distance. A subtle boundary she protected very carefully. She would send me short messages like, "Auntie, we're busy today. Auntie, Sod will call later. Auntie, we already ate." Nothing rude. Nothing harsh. But nothing warm either. Once, when I called Sod, she picked up. "Sod is resting. Can he call later?" "Of course," I said gently. "No problem." But he didn't call later. That night I sat in bed, staring at my silent phone, wondering if I should stop calling so much. I didn't want to burden him, that I didn't want him to feel suffocated. I wanted to give him space. But giving him space also meant giving myself emptiness. A few weeks later I saw pictures online. Sod and his wife celebrating with family friends. Smiling, laughing. Eating food he used to say tasted nothing like Mom's cooking. I stared at the pictures for a long time. Not in jealousy. Not in anger. Just in quiet disbelief. I never expected to be invited everywhere. But he could have called, he could have said, "Mom, I'm going out today." Something. Anything. Instead, I found out like a stranger, scrolling through images on a screen. My fingers trembled slightly as I closed the app. I told myself, "It's all right. He's enjoying his life. That's what matters." But the truth was, for the first time I felt truly outside his world. One afternoon I wasn't feeling well, my head hurt, and my legs felt heavy. Sod always used to check on me whenever I was sick, even before marriage. I sent him a small message. "Son, I'm not feeling well today. Just letting you know." He didn't reply. Hours passed. Evening came. Night arrived. Finally, around 11 p.m., his message appeared. "Okay. Rest. I'll talk later." No call. No visit. Nothing. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding the phone loosely between my fingers. It wasn't his words that hurt. It was what was missing. The worry. The care. The "Mom, I'm coming. Wait for me." Those things were gone now. One night I set the table for two out of habit. I placed 2 plates, 2 glasses, 2 spoons. Then I realized what I had done. I removed the second plate slowly, my hands shaking just a little. The house echoed with quietness. I had lived in silence before. But this silence felt different. This silence felt like a goodbye. A goodbye that no one said out loud. A few days later, Sod visited for a short time. While he sat on the sofa scrolling through his phone, I brought him tea. "Mom, don't worry so much," he said casually. "I'm just busy." He nodded. I smiled that I wanted to keep the peace. But inside, something whispered, "You're not a priority anymore. You are a memory he visits when he has time." He never apologized for the missed calls, or the distance, or the silence. And I never asked him to. Because mothers don't ask for love. They quietly wait for it. Even when waiting hurts. The rail crack arrived one afternoon. Sod called, his voice hurried as always. "Mom, I really don't have time for long calls. Please try to understand. I have a life now. Life now." Those 3 words stayed in the air long after the call ended. I sat down slowly, letting the weight of them settle inside me. I had always known he would build his own life, that I wanted that for him. But I never thought his new life would have no space for me. I wasn't asking for much. Just a few minutes, a small conversation, a little warmth. But he didn't have time. Not anymore. Not for me. The days kept passing, and with each passing day, I felt a little more distance growing between Sod and me. Not loud distance, not dramatic distance, just quiet. Slow. Unnoticed by everyone except a mother's heart. And my heart felt it deeply. There was a time Sod's promises meant everything. If he said, "I'll come after work," he would come even if it was raining. If he said, "Mom, I'll bring sweets for you," he would bring the biggest box. But now, his promises floated in the air like feathers, soft, light, and easily blown away. One evening he said, "Mom, I'll come this weekend. We'll have lunch together." I spent the whole morning cooking. I prepared his favorite dishes. I kept checking the window, expecting his car. Hours passed. I finally called him. Son, are you coming? Oh, Mom, I forgot to tell you. We made other plans. Maybe next time. Maybe next time. Those 3 words sit heavily on a mother's heart. I smiled into the phone, even though my chest felt tight. That's all right, I said gently. Enjoy your time. When I ended the call, I quietly turned off the stove and packed the food away. The house felt emptier than before. Not because he didn't come, but because he didn't even remember to tell me. I used to call Saad without thinking. Any time of the day. Any day of the week. Just to hear his voice. Just to know if he had eaten. Just to ask if he was all right. But every time I called, the same thing happened. Ring, 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 no answer. Sometimes he called back hours later. Sometimes he didn't. And slowly, my calls turned into something else. Not conversations. Not connection. Just missed calls. One evening, I stared at the call log on my phone. 3 missed calls from me, 0 from him. My heart whispered softly. Maybe you should stop calling so much. Maybe he feels suffocated. But my mind replied. You're his mother. How can a mother suffocate her own child with love? I didn't know the answer. I still don't. Saad used to stay for hours when he visited. We would sit together, drink tea and talk about small things. Sometimes he would lie with his head in my lap and talk about his dreams. But now, his visits were 10 minutes, 0.5 minutes. Sometimes even less. He would stand near the door, as if ready to leave already. Mom, I'm in a hurry. Mom, I can't stay. Mom, I have somewhere to be. He always had somewhere to be. Always someone else to see. Always something more important. Once he came to drop off a parcel. I thought he might stay for tea. But he said, no time today. He didn't even step inside properly. I watched him walk back to his car. He didn't look back. And I stood there, holding the cup of tea I had made for him. One afternoon I texted him. Son, it's been a few days. Just checking on you. He replied after 2 hours. Mom, please don't message so much when I'm at work. It's hard to focus. I stared at the words on the screen. I read them again. And again. He didn't say it loudly, he didn't say it angrily. But it felt like someone quietly closing a door in my face. I didn't reply. My hands trembled slightly, but I kept them folded in my lap. For the first time I wondered. Am I disturbing him? Am I becoming a burden? Is my love becoming too heavy for him? These thoughts hurt more than anything he had said. A relative invited me to a small family dinner. When I reached, I saw Saad and his wife sitting with others. They were smiling, laughing, enjoying their time. I walked slowly toward them. Saad saw me, but he didn't smile the way he used to. His expression changed slightly. Not annoyed, not angry, just surprised. You came, he said. I nodded gently. I was invited too. Instead of moving a chair for me or making space, he just turned back to his conversation. His wife smiled politely but didn't say much. I sat at the corner of the room silently, listening to everyone talk. Saad glanced at me occasionally, but there was no warmth in his eyes. No spark of happiness. No sign that my presence mattered. For the first time I felt like just another person in the room. Not his mother. Just someone sitting nearby. When I went home that night, the quiet inside the house felt like a blanket covering my heart. Saad's life became faster. My life became slower. He would talk about projects, meetings, outings, trips, new plans. And I would listen, nodding, trying to be happy for him. But every night, when I sat alone in the living room, the only sound was the ticking of the clock. Sometimes I would hold my phone in my hand and think, should I call? Should I wait? Should I let him call me first? Will he even call? These questions lived in my mind every day. Once, I waited the whole evening for his call. I kept my ringtone loud so I wouldn't miss it. At 11:30 p.m., I finally gave up and went to bed. But my sleep didn't come easily. Because love makes you wait. even when waiting hurts. One day, Saad visited briefly. He went to the balcony to take a phone call. I didn't mean to listen. But his voice was clear. Yeah bro, I just stopped at my mom's place. I won't stay long. You know how it is. You know how it is. Those words pierced quietly. What was it? My love. My presence. My desire to see him. Why did he speak as if visiting me was a chore? I turned away and pretended I hadn't heard anything. When he came inside, I smiled softly. But something inside me had cracked. My birthday used to be a special day. Saad never forgot it. Not even once. He used to bring flowers, cake, sometimes even small gifts, but the real gift was his smile. His loud, "Happy birthday, Mom." This year, there was no call in the morning, no message, no visit. I waited the whole day. Evening came. Night arrived. Finally, at 10 p.m., he sent a short message. Sorry, Mom. Busy day. Happy birthday. That was it. No call. No voice. No warmth. I placed the phone on the table gently. I whispered to myself. It's okay. He remembered at least. But my heart felt heavy, as if someone had placed a stone inside it. Mothers notice small things. Tiny things. Hidden things. I noticed that Saad had started avoiding my eyes. When he talked, he looked at the floor or the wall, or his phone. Anywhere except directly at me. It was as if looking into my eyes made him uncomfortable. Maybe it reminded him of something. Maybe it made him feel guilty. I never asked. I simply accepted the new way he interacted with me. But inside it hurt. 'Cause eye contact is love. And when someone avoids your eyes, it means they are also avoiding your heart. There came a day when the silence between us felt bigger than the distance. He sat on one side of the room, I sat on the other. We exchanged only a few words. How are you? I'm fine. Okay. That was the entire conversation. Two people who once shared everything. Now sharing almost nothing. There was no anger. No argument. No loud voices. Just a quiet wall between us. A wall made of time, distractions, new priorities, and small moments that slowly pushed me out of his life. And the hardest part, I didn't know how to climb over that wall, and he didn't even notice it was there. There comes a moment in every mother's life when her heart hears something before her ears do, a moment when love is still standing, but hope quietly sits down, a moment when you know something has changed, even before anyone says a word. For me, that moment arrived on a quiet Sunday afternoon. I had been holding my questions inside for months. Questions that kept me awake at night. Questions that made my chest feel heavy. Did I do something wrong? Am I disturbing him? Is my presence too much for him now? Does he still need me? For weeks I wondered if I should ask Saad. But I never did. Mothers don't like asking questions that might break their own hearts. But that Sunday I woke up feeling different. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I was hurting too much. Maybe I needed answers, even if they shattered me. So I made tea. I put biscuits in a small plate. And I sent him a gentle message. Son, if you have time today, could you stop by for a few minutes? I just want to see you. He replied after 15 minutes. Okay. I'll come for a bit. My heart softened at those words. Even a bit felt big to a mother who had been waiting for months. When the doorbell rang, I quickly straightened my scarf and wiped my hands. Opened the door. Saad stood there, looking slightly tired but neat, dressed as he always was. Greetings, Mom, he said. Greetings, son. Come in. His steps were quick. He sat on the sofa for barely a second before checking his phone. I served him tea. He didn't touch it. He just said, Mom, I don't have a lot of time. I have to go somewhere with my wife. So, what did you want to talk about? My heart sank with those words. Not because he said them, but because he said them so easily. Like my time didn't matter. Like my need to talk didn't matter. Like I should hurry. I sat across from him. My hands trembled slightly, but I kept them on my lap. Saad, I said quietly. Tell me honestly, have I become a disturbance in your life? He looked at me, surprised. Maybe even slightly uncomfortable. Disturbance. Why would you think that? I smiled gently. Because you rarely call. You rarely visit. You don't stay long. You avoid long conversations. I feel like you don't have time for me anymore. He exhaled, rubbing his forehead. Mom, it's not that. I'm just really busy. Life is busy. Busy. Such a small word. Such a painful word. Such a powerful way of saying I don't have space for you. There was a moment of silence. Then Saad said the words that broke me quietly. Mom, you need to understand something. I'm married now. I don't have the same kind of time I used to. You can't expect me to be calling or visiting all the time. I felt the air leave my chest. Not because the words were harsh, he didn't shout, he didn't mean to hurt me. But sometimes pain doesn't need volume, sometimes pain arrives in calm, soft sentences. I looked at him. He looked away. So, I whispered, you don't have time for me anymore? Mom, don't say it like that, he said quickly. It makes me feel guilty. I lowered my eyes. Guilt. Another kind of distance. Another kind of wall. So my pain was now an inconvenience. I swallowed slowly, trying not to show how deeply the words cut me. I'm sorry, I said softly. I won't take much of your time from now on. He nodded, relieved. Relieved. Then Saad stood up to leave. His phone rang. He answered immediately, laughing lightly while talking to someone else. He didn't even finish his tea. He didn't even hug me goodbye. As he walked to the door, my hand slipped, and my own phone fell to the ground with a small sound. Saad turned slightly but didn't come back to pick it up. He just said, Mom, take care. I'll come again sometime. Sometime. Another light promise. Another empty feather. I picked up my phone slowly. It wasn't broken, but something inside me was. I watched him walk away. He didn't look back. Mothers say goodbye with their hands. Sons say goodbye with their steps. And his steps were quick, too quick. As if he couldn't wait to leave. That relief hurt more than any sentence could. After he left, I sat alone in the living room. The tea was untouched. The biscuits were untouched. And my heart felt untouched too. I stared at the sofa where he had sat for exactly 9 minutes. 9 minutes. That was the worth of my motherhood that day. I whispered to myself. He really doesn't have time anymore. It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't anger. Just a quiet realization. A simple truth. The kind that doesn't shout, but stays with you forever. That night, I opened my phone and typed a message. Saad, I know life is busy. I know you have responsibilities. But don't forget your mom is still here. Still waiting. Still praying. Still loving you. I stared at those words for a long time. Then I deleted them. Sometimes mothers don't send messages because they are afraid of adding one more burden. For years, calling Saad was a habit. A joy. A comfort. But after that day, after that sentence, after the way he said, I don't have the same time anymore, I stopped. Not out of anger. Not out of punishment. But out of acceptance. I placed the phone face down on the table. I whispered. Let him call when he wants to. Let him come when he chooses. Let him remember me on his own. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Mothers don't stop calling. Even when they try. Days passed. No call. No visit. Not even a short message. Sometimes I stared at my phone for minutes, waiting for it to light up. But it didn't. Every morning I told myself, maybe today. Every night I said, maybe tomorrow. But tomorrow came and went. Quietly. Softly, without his voice. One evening, I opened the drawer near my bed. Inside was a framed photo from Saad's wedding. In it, I was smiling, a full, bright smile. The smile of a mother whose son still held her hand. Still looked at her with love. Still made her feel important. I touched the photo with my fingers. My voice trembled as I whispered. I didn't know that after this day, everything would change. I hugged the photo to my chest. Tears filled my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. After afternoon, when I was folding laundry, a thought came to me. Maybe I've been holding on to the boy he used to be. Not the man he is now. Maybe the boy who once called me every evening no longer exists. Maybe the boy who once clung to my dupatta is now a man who clings to responsibilities, schedules, deadlines. And maybe, just maybe, I need to accept that motherhood changes too. It doesn't fade, but it transforms. Like a river changing its path. Still water, still flowing. Just not toward you anymore. I sat down on the edge of my bed slowly. I placed my hands on my lap. And I said to myself, he hasn't stopped loving me. He has just stopped showing it the way he used to. And I need to understand that. It wasn't relief, it wasn't peace. Just acceptance, a quiet acceptance that settled inside me like a sigh. There's no how to cry without crying. The days after that painful afternoon moved slowly, almost like the house itself had begun to breathe heavier. The rooms were quiet, but not the gentle kind of quiet. It was the kind that follows after something breaks. The kind that makes you sit still and think about every word you said, and every word you didn't say. I woke up earlier than usual now. Not because I wanted to, but because sleep no longer held me the way it once did. I would sit near the window with a cup of tea, watching the sky shift from dark blue to pale gold. The world was waking up, but inside me, something felt like it had fallen asleep. I kept replaying Saad's voice in my mind. Mom, I don't have time for this. I'm busy. Why do you always worry? I had heard those words before. But that day they felt final. As if something inside him had quietly closed its door. And yet, even in the middle of all that hurt, I found myself defending him in my heart. He is stressed, I whispered to myself. He is young. He is trying to build his life. He doesn't mean to be cruel. Because a mother's instinct is not to fight, a mother's instinct is to soften. So I softened. But the pain did not. After that day, Saad did not call for almost 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I tried to stay busy. I washed the same shelves twice. I organized my old books. I even cooked his favorite rice, even though I knew no one was coming to eat it. I placed the bowl on the table and smiled sadly at it. Look at me, I said softly. Cooking for shadows. It was strange. How a home that once felt full could feel so empty, even though the furniture hadn't moved, the walls hadn't changed, and the cups were still placed in the same cabinet. Sometimes I found myself standing near the phone, waiting for it to ring. Not hoping for a long call. Not hoping for long conversations. Just a "Mom, how are you?" Just that. But it stayed silent. On the 15th day my phone finally buzzed. For a moment I stopped breathing and my hands shook as I picked it up. It was a message. Only 3 words. Busy. Will call. No greeting, no mom. No warmth. Just 3 cold, plain words. But mothers can warm even cold words, we have done it all our lives. So I whispered. At least he remembered. And I smiled, even though it hurt. I typed back a single sentence. Take care of yourself. Not call me. Not why so long. Not I miss you. Just care. Because that is the only language my heart knew. A week passed again. Still no call. This time I did something I never imagined I would do. I turned my phone on silent. Not to ignore him, but to protect myself. To stop checking. To stop jumping at every notification. To stop building small hopes that broke too easily. One evening I was watering the plants outside when my neighbor, an older woman named Nargis, walked over. She always had a way of appearing right when someone's heart was heavy. She said, "You look tired. Is everything okay?" For a moment I thought of telling her everything. How my son had drifted away. How his wife barely spoke to me. How my days felt longer, and my nights felt colder. But all I said was, "Just life." She smiled in that knowing way older women do, like she had heard that same answer from many mothers before. And then she placed a gentle hand on my arm. "You know," she said, "a child grows in a mother's lap, but one day he gets up and walks into his own world. It is nature. But it does not mean the mother is forgotten. Sometimes the child returns. Sometimes he learns. Her words settled inside me like warm tea on a cold morning. Maybe Saad would learn. Maybe he would return. Maybe time wasn't a punishment. Maybe it was simply a teacher. In the following days, I started doing something new, that I began living for myself again. Not fully. Not perfectly, but slowly. I went for short morning walks, I read old books I had put away for years, I started sewing again, a hobby I had loved but forgotten. Each small step felt like picking up pieces of myself that I had dropped while caring for everyone else. And during all this, I realized something very quietly, very gently. I had made my world too small. I had made Saad the center of everything. His calls, his visits, his time. And because he was my whole world, when he stopped calling, my whole world collapsed. So now I was trying to build a new one. Not to replace him. A mother never replaces her child. But to remind myself that love is not a chain. That it should not tie someone down. Not even a son. Should give space. And still survive. Then one evening, when the sky was turning orange and the air felt quiet and soft, my phone rang. A real call. Not a message. When I saw Saad's name on the screen, my heart stopped for a moment. I didn't answer immediately. I held the phone, breathed deeply, and let the moment sit in my hands like something fragile. Then I picked up. "Mom." His voice was tired. "Yes, Saad. I'm here." There was a long pause on his side, a pause filled with hesitations, with guilt, with things unsaid. Finally he said, "Mom, I know I've been distant." I kept silent. Not because I was angry, but because I wanted him to speak freely without rushing him. He continued, "Life has been so busy, work, responsibilities. I didn't realize how much time had passed." I nodded even though he couldn't see it. "It happens," I said softly. "Life moves fast." He whispered, "I didn't mean to hurt you." My eyes warmed. Not with tears, but with a gentle release. "I know," I replied. "You're growing. You're building a life. I understand." Another pause. Then he said something I had been waiting to hear for months. "Mom, I miss talking to you." Those words cracked something inside me. Not in a painful way, but like a frozen river beginning to thaw. "I miss you too, Saad. I'll come visit," he said. "This weekend. If you're free." I laughed softly. A mother is always free for her child. His voice softened. "I know. That's why I took you for granted." And for the first time in a long while, we talked. Not long, not deeply. But it was enough. Enough to stitch the first small thread between us again. After the call, I sat down on the sofa and closed my eyes. The house felt warmer. Not because anything had changed physically, but because something inside me had settled. I realized I didn't want Saad to feel guilty. I didn't want him to call out of obligation. I wanted him to come to me because he wanted to. Not because I demanded it. Love grows quietly. It cannot be forced. So I decided something that evening. I would love him without pulling. I would care without expecting. I would be present without clinging. Because motherhood is not about keeping your child close. It is about giving them space to return on their own. Saad came that weekend. He didn't stay long, just an hour. But the moment he stepped inside, he hugged me. A simple hug. But full of warmth, an apology, and something like love rediscovered. Talk. We ate together. We laughed a little. He promised to visit again. Not a perfect promise. Not a dramatic one, just simple. And I accepted it with a grateful heart. Because healing does not come in big moments, that comes in small ones. Slowly, quietly. Over the next weeks, Saad called more often. Not daily, not even every other day. But enough that I stopped waiting by the phone and started simply living. And slowly, my heart learned to breathe without ache. Not because I stopped loving him, but because I learned to love myself too. One evening, while sitting near the window with a cup of tea, I whispered to myself, "He still cares. He just needed time." And so did I. And for the first time in many months, I felt peace settle inside me. Not perfect peace. Not forever peace. The seasons changed quietly after that, almost like life itself had softened around the edges. The pain that once sat heavily in my chest began to feel lighter, like it had learned to rest instead of hurt. I still lived alone. The house was still small. The evenings were still quiet. But something inside me was different. The silence no longer felt like punishment, that it felt like space. Space for me to breathe, space for him to grow. I realized something during those long days of waiting and hurting and healing. Children don't stop loving their parents, they simply start living their own lives. And sometimes, we mothers forget to live ours. Saad didn't suddenly become a perfect son, he still got busy, he still forgot to call sometimes, he still spoke quickly, rushing from one task to another. But now, when he called, I didn't cling to his voice, I didn't rush to fill the silence, I didn't let fear speak for me. Instead, I listened and I smiled. And I let the moment exist without trying to hold it too tightly. He visited every 2 or 3 weeks. Sometimes for a meal, sometimes for tea, sometimes just to say hello. He came not because I asked, but because he wanted to. And that made all the difference. We were sitting at the dining table, 2 cups of warm tea between us. The room smelled of cardamom and old memories. He looked at me, his eyes softer than they had been in years, and said quietly, "Mom, I think I grew up too fast." I didn't respond immediately, I just waited, letting him speak at his own pace. He continued, "I thought giving time to my life meant taking time away from you. But now I understand, you never asked for hours. You just wanted a moment." I placed my hand gently over his. "A mother never needs much," I said. "Just to know her child remembers she's still here." He nodded, and in that small, simple moment, I felt the world settle. Not in a dramatic way. Not in a perfect way. But in a real way. In all the hurt, in all the waiting, in all the silent afternoons where I sat by the window wondering what went wrong, I discovered something important. Love does not disappear when someone forgets to call. Love does not end when someone gets busy. Love does not weaken when life pulls people in different directions. Love only weakens when we stop giving it space. I learned that I cannot stop time, that I cannot make my son a little boy again, I cannot take him back to the days when he held my hand everywhere he went. But I can choose how I love him now, with openness, not expectation, with gentleness, not fear, with patience, not pressure. And in return, he began finding his way back to me slowly, naturally, beautifully. Tonight, as I finish telling this story, I am sitting in the same quiet home, but it no longer feels lonely. My phone lies on the table beside me, it may ring, it may not. And both are okay. Because my heart now holds something stronger than fear. Acceptance, understanding, and a gentle hope. Hope that my son will continue to grow, hope that he will remember me in his own way, in his own time. Hope that love, even stretched thin, can still remain unbroken. I once believed that his silence meant he no longer needed me. But now I know a softer truth. Children never stop needing their mothers. They just learn to need them differently. And we, as mothers, must learn to love them differently too. Not with hands that hold tightly, but with hearts that let go gently. So when my married son told me he had no time for me anymore, yes, it hurt, it broke something inside me. But it also taught me how to rebuild, how to breathe, how to love with freedom. How to find myself again. And now, as the night settles softly around me, I whisper a small prayer into the quiet. May he always find his way in life, and may he always find his way back home.